Hello, UCCS alumni and friends. Welcome to our newest 5 Things You Need to Know, our new virtual program series, which brings to you, UCCS faculty and staff, to talk about timely issues and keep you in the know on what's happening at UCCS. We do have other sessions housed on our website, alumni.uccs.edu, and more planned in the coming weeks, so stay tuned to your email. Today, I'm very excited. We have with us Mathew Cox, Senior Executive Director of Enrollment Management at UCCS. He's been here 8 years. Correct me if I'm wrong when you come on, Mathew. He has worked in admissions at colleges and universities in North Carolina and Mississippi, really his whole career. He is an expert in this area. He earned graduate and undergraduate degrees at the University of Southern Mississippi, and he's here today to talk to us about what's happening at UCCS this fall, and importantly, how alumni and friends can help with enrollment and share their stories and continue to be a part of the UCCS community with admissions. Before we get started, I want to note that this is live and Mathew is available to answer questions in the chat afterward. I'll pose questions to him, so get started in the chat anytime you like with some questions you may have for him. We're going to run through 5, maybe 5.5, 5 3/4 questions today, Mathew. So welcome. Maybe a quick hello to our alumni and friends. And let's start with a pre-question, not one of our 5 questions, but give us a sense of where UCCS is heading into the fall.
Right. Well, thanks, Joanna, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Great to be here. Great to collaborate with the Alumni Affairs Office and Joanna and her staff there to be a part of this. I think it's really important to keep alumni updated on not just the activities of the university, but their engagement in supporting those activities. So thanks a lot, Joanna. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's probably not news to anyone that this is a challenging fall for higher education across the country. And all you have to do is listen to the Today Show here and there, and they're interviewing college presidents about their fall opening plans and the challenges around those, and the wide differences in sort of how institutions are going to make their way forward in the fall. I think UCCS has been extremely thoughtful about this. I think that we took our time. We tried to balance being really thoughtful with conveying information to our prospective families and new incoming students. And it's soon is never soon enough for families coming to college, right? They're doing a lot of planning. They're trying to figure things out, and we've really tried hard to balance that. And so at this point, we, like most institutions, are sort of challenged to figure out exactly where we're going to land for the fall semester. I'll say that we believe that we are going to land with a total enrollment that is much better off than we projected from a budgetary standpoint, from a headcount standpoint, only 2, 3, 4 months ago when this whole thing really broke out. So that's good news. We've been moving in the right direction for about the past 5 or 6 weeks, and by that I mean overall enrollment, both continuing and new students, has really gone in the right direction. And so at this point, we're sort of looking at the fact that we're down about 7% in overall enrollment, though that is far below our worst case budgetary scenario. We're all trying to work as hard as we can to reduce that even lower. In the last month and a half or so, we've moved from being down in the mid 20% range to being down just at 7% at this point, and a couple percentage points better every single week. So that's heading in the right direction. New students, both new freshmen and transfers, are really beginning to pick up steam as well. And so though it is the case that from a new student enrolled standpoint, we're down about 15%, that also has moved from negative 30 and 25% 2 months ago to 15% in both of those populations. So moving in the right direction. We've still got a lot of work to do. We've got about 3 or 4 weeks before the semester starts. So it's a busy time, but we've seen an uptick in activity among our new students in particular very, very recently. So I'm happy about where we are heading most recently in the last couple weeks or so.
I think any of us who work at the university know that August is a really exciting time. It's the start of the new year for us, and seeing students return to campus is just so invigorating, so wonderful.
It is, Joanne. I just ran over here from our second day of offering an opportunity for admitted freshmen and transfers to have an on-campus programmatic experience, socially distanced, masked up, and the whole 9 yards. But we'll host about 30 students in 2 different sessions, so about 60 total for College of Education updates from our dean in the College of Education. Yesterday, we had some LAS visitors and hear from one of our associate deans in LAS, moving through the rest of the colleges and schools over the next coming days. So it is nice to have people back on campus, albeit distanced and masked up. It's hard to tell if they're smiling or not, but they're here and they're involved. So it is good to have them back.
It's great. Can you talk a little bit about why universities and UCCS work with alumni on admissions?
Yeah, first of all, it's critical. And, as we all know, UCCS is a bit of a younger institution than most out there. For instance, all 3 of my prior institutions are 100 plus years old where I worked. And some of them, 2 in particular, really were utilizing alumni in a pretty strong way, both on what I would call sort of the front end of we'll call it recruitment, but actually I kind of think that cheapens the activity a little bit. What we're really talking about are alumni for an institution doing their best to project their experience and really sort of boil that down for parents and students. What is it that I'm going to get from an experiential standpoint for being a student at UCCS? Look, the admissions office, and they do a great job, and they're in my enrollment management unit. They can talk all day to parents and students about the technicalities, the degrees we offer, the student life experience, the athletics, all of this. We can talk about all of that. But there's only one group that can say that they lived it, and this is how it went, and this is why I'm successful in my career, and that's our alumni. And so it's really important to add that, I would call it sort of this real life sort of level to talking to parents and students. It's critical. From just a pure practicality standpoint too, alumni from any institution, the more successful that institution is a decade after they graduated, 20 years, 30 years after they graduated, the more valuable their own experience becomes, the more valuable their degree becomes, the more sought after they and their professional lives can become due to the current success of the institution. So I don't want to be cliche about it, but it's truly a win-win type of situation.
Yeah, you just called it a win-win, and I think of it as such an important cycle for alumni who were students, become alumni, have their degree, and that next generation of students. Can you share with us how alumni can share their story?
Yeah, I think that I have often thought this is, 2 ways. One is just sort of the organic, what was your mountain lion experience? How do you feel about the value of your experience and where you are today? What about your experience is important for you to share organically? What does that even mean? In the workplace, at church, in the grocery store, right? With family members. If you had a good experience and you feel privileged to have this educational experience behind you and you feel like that it's been a real platform for you, then having that organic opportunity to talk with family members, friends, coworkers, etc., is is well received by people, because you're not being paid by the Office of Admissions to do this, right? You're doing it because of what it did for you. So I think that's sort of the organic part. Share that news wherever you are. I'm amazed, having been here for 8 years, the number of times I have no idea, and on conversation number 3 or 4, weeks after I met somebody, be they parents that are parents of kids that my kids play with or what have you, that only then I find out that they were a UCCS graduate, and I think, well, gosh, you've talked about what you do for a living, and you've talked about how great you're enjoying what you're doing and your family members and all this, and only because you asked me where I work or how I came to Colorado Springs did I find out that you were a UCCS graduate. I will say, and I've never had somebody say, yeah, and I could take it or leave it. It's always, it did a lot for me Sorry, my phone's buzzing in the background. We truly are getting back to opening. And so I think that organic conversation is important. The other is your availability to do the things like Joanna that you and your team and I collaborated on, the mountain line riding project that we just wrapped up, that we're already getting feedback from. Be available for those specific asks, if you will. I know when I graduated from college, it was several years because before I could afford to donate to the athletic program and the arts program at my alma mater. Eventually I did that. But for the first 5, 6 years after I graduated, I was trying to, make ends meet. But what I was available for was outreach, signing a postcard, giving my phone number to the Alumni Association as a contact for people that dropped into the website, those sort of things. So you can give back to your institution in ways that aren't monetary. And in fact, might argue if you were able to really impact somebody's decision to come to UCCS, that's more of a monetary contribution than most of us make annually to any of our alma maters. So there's a lot wrapped up in that too. So those would be sort of two ways, I think.
I have a related question to that, and I'll just put a little plug in. You mentioned it. If you're an alum, watch your email, because we do put call outs sometimes to help admissions, help your team in the areas you talked about. So keep an eye on your email. But my related question to that is, does it matter to you whether an alum graduated 1 year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, graduated from a certain program, has a certain kind of degree? Talk a little bit about what impact any type of alum can have and whether that really matters.
It's a great question, Joanna. To me, we can find a way, and I know you and I've had discussions, and I ventured that you feel the same. We can find an opportunity for alums to help be impactful. Excuse me. And some of it depends on their own comfort level, right? If you happen to be a listener and you graduated 30 years ago, you and I know the institution's changed a lot physically, right? But the education you received, what it did for you as an educated person, that hasn't changed, right? We're still providing a life-changing experience. Sure, you may not be able to talk about the Gallagly Recreation Center or the Ent Center or something like that if you're not affiliated with it and you graduated some time ago or you didn't experience it. But we have opportunities to help. So no, it doesn't matter. I think it really, I'll call them sort of refined enrollment and alumni engagement processes at one other institution where I was. We actually had identified alumni in specific professions at different metro areas in and out of state, so that if we got students who were admitted who had an interest in, I recall one who was a veterinarian in a area where we recruited very heavily, and she was available and was more than happy to email outreach to students who were admitted from that area who had an interest in health sciences, period, and veterinary sciences in particular. So the major thing is an interesting one, right? What did you graduate in? Because there are some real connections that we can help connect students in alumni. So overall, Joanna, it doesn't matter. We'll find a place for you to help. Some of it's about your comfort level, and might be willing to bet that you and I both would say, let us know what you're interested in. How would you like to help? And we can plug you in. So we'll give some guidance, right? Like we did with the Ride a Mountain Lion. But we'll also take some feedback and we'll sort of figure it out as we go through. I would describe what we're doing, you and I together, your office and my unit together, as sort of being on the cusp of really fully implementing a more comprehensive, robust alumni and enrollment management collaboration. So I'm excited to do that.
And if you're on this webinar or you watch it on a replay and you are inspired, email our office, alumni@uccs.edu, and raise your hand and let us know you'd like to volunteer. And as Mathew said, we can find a way to plug you in with what you're comfortable with. All right, I have our last question, and then we'll go to Q&A. So again, if you have questions, put them in the live chat, and Mathew said he can answer some of these. We've all been, many of us, working from home if we've been able. We know some people aren't able to do that, but But those of us who are working from home may have picked up old or new hobbies or found a silver lining or, adjusted to the new normal. Can you share a little bit about what that's been like for you? Have you found a new hobby, picked up an old hobby? What's been a silver lining for you?
Joanna, not necessarily a new hobby. Like a lot of folks out there, I dabble a little bit in very amateurish trail running, and so being able to be at home and at the end of a day, knock off and take a little bit of a run and then come back and finish some stuff up at night versus being in the office where I know this. You feel like you got to complete everything, no matter how long it takes. You get home at 8 o'clock or whatever at night, and you heat up your food in the microwave. Being at home has allowed me to walk out of my office, right downstairs, actually eat dinner with the family, and then pop back up and finish some things or take a run or whatever. So that's been a little bit nice. From a business standpoint, one of the takeaways that I think we are all, in fact, I was just talking with the education dean about this. There are lessons learned from this, and there shouldn't be any mistake about that. There are positive lessons that I think as an institution we'll be able to take away and then add on top of the things we were already doing once things do return to quote unquote, some level of normalcy. So I think the takeaways we've learned, all of our online webinars for prospective students and families, as an example, we will layer in much more of that moving forward than we ever would have had it not been for this. So, yeah.
So true. You're on campus now, aren't you? I think I recognize your office.
Yeah, I am. I've popped in here and there. And my kids aren't back at school yet. I've got a rising 10th grader and a rising 6th grader. And so sometimes it's actually a little quieter to come back up to campus right now. But because we have these visit sessions beginning to ramp back up, I've been popping in on those to see how those are going. So I am, yeah.
That's great. All right, we have a few questions in the live chat. I'll run a few of these by you. First of all, hi Matthew. What have you found to be the most effective types of messages alumni can use to encourage students to continue pursuing their education during COVID?
Yeah. What a great question. So whoever submitted that, thank you. It's a great question, and it's hugely important. And so the first and foremost thing I would have people make sure they understand, and if you're a parent listening, you may know this. Parents are highly influential, even in this age of TikTok videos and YouTubing like we're doing right now, or whatever else it is that our teenagers are involved in. At the end of the day, they still rely a lot on the parental sort of position on this whole thing, the college going experience and where to go to college. Even if you don't think they're listening, and sometimes I think that about my 15-year-old, they are, and they're picking up on things. So parents are highly influential. And so why do I say that? Because as you have colleagues, parental age colleagues, let's say, talking about outcomes is hugely important. This is what, alumni are our outcomes. So this is why talking about what the institution did for you personally and professionally is so important, because parents get that, right? They understand it. And the more they sort of gravitate toward UCCS being a strong option and opportunity, the more their students will hear that. And so I think everybody can do that. So that language about outcomes is really important. Secondly, the language about, and I don't know where folks listening fall on the spectrum of this, but the reality is that we offer lots of degree programs and lots of academic experiences, and students still seemed a little bit spun up that they have to have it all figured out when they come as a freshman or even a new transfer student. The reality is, especially for incoming first-year freshman students, you don't have to have it all figured out. That is what we do, right? So this notion, this sort of, it'll be okay, right? It's a good place to be. The outcomes have proven to be there, and we'll take good care of you. That resonates. UCCS specifically is one of, if not the most, and I was at 2 small private colleges and now 2 state universities, and is one of the most student-centric, student-supportive academic institution where I've been in my 27-year career. So I think that gives students and parents some, okay, so I have time to search, I can figure it out, and there'll be support. Yes.
We've been talking a lot about incoming freshmen and the unusual times we're in right now as a student who, or a family who had a student graduate from high school and is heading to college. But here's a different version of that question, which is really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about ways alumni can also make a difference with retention? And by that, we mean students who maybe finished their freshman year or sophomore year and are working toward their degree. That's what we call retention. So talk a little bit about that and the role alumni can play there.
Yeah, and this also reaches back. So I don't know that I fully answered that first question as it relates to in this sort of COVID time. So here's what we know, and here's what the national literature shows, and it's showing it again this year, just like it showed it back in the recession in 08-09, is that students with graduates with a baccalaureate degree or higher, right? There are very few careers out there that are completely and utterly sort of, economic proof, right? Recession proof. But what we do know from the national literature is that folks who graduate with a baccalaureate degree or higher, their ability to remain employed and to thrive in these downward economic times is far greater than those that don't. And so I can recall a student I also teach a GPS class, an incoming freshman seminar class each year, looking forward to that starting back up. But I recall having a conversation last year with a student who, shockingly, as an 18-year-old, I know this will be a shock, had it all figured out, right? I got it all figured out. I don't need this. I'm here, but hey. And so we had this conversation where I talked with him about the fact that this isn't just about you need that credential to get that specific job. This is about your life. This is about sort of this end in mind approach of this is bigger than just step A to get job B. You can do that at a lot of places. And we all know there are some jobs that don't even require that. This is about your education as a human being. And this is about your ability to set yourself up, one day your family up, maybe even currently your family up, for something that is more, provides more security and substance moving forward in the long haul. And so I think talking about that, we have a lot of first gen families. So we talk about that in a way that doesn't say, oh, it's sort of this elitist, it's baccalaureate degree or nothing type of thing, and you must have, right? But we talk about it in a way that says this provides opportunities for you that help navigate rough times more often than had you not had this degree program. So if it comes down to it, if we want to talk about why should you stay, if for no other reason, because good and bad times come and go, that's our history. That's the global economy. That is what it's going to be. So setting yourself up in the best way possible to navigate those and mitigate the bad times and really sort of surf on the high times, if you will, that's why you should stay in, if nothing else. Now, what I want everybody to say is, to be a global citizen and an educated human being, that in and of itself, I should stay. But as you and I know, some 18-year-olds have it all figured out. So that's what you got to talk them through. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think who better than an alum to talk about the importance of walking across the stage and getting that diploma. And so many of our alumni have amazing stories to tell about perseverance and overcoming adversity to earn a degree here.
Absolutely. Joanna, one of the reasons why in my 8 years I've never missed a May commencement is because the charge that it gives any of us that work on a college campus to see students and to see a third of the graduates, if not more, in that crowd stand up when the chancellor asks if they're first generation, to see a third, if not more, of those students stand up if they themselves or their families have been in military service. I mean, things of that nature, if they've worked full time while in college, many of us were fortunate enough not to have to do that. The amount of students who stand up to any or all of those questions is astounding. It is the reason why we're in this. right? It is the reason why we're in this. And so if alumni can help do that, I would actually say, if you ever are in town and can make a commencement to rekindle what that was like, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you. We're nearing the end of our time. Thank you for these great questions. Thank you for being here. Again, I mentioned, if you are an alum on this watching and are interested, email us, alumni@uccs.edu, on how you can help support admissions at UCCS. Mathew, do you have any parting thoughts or things that we didn't get to cover in our 5 things you need to know that you think we need to know?
I think we've covered a lot in a short period of time, Joanna. I think that I know that when I graduated from my alma mater, it took a while before I really took ownership of that role, if that makes any sense, right? I was a new graduate. I was pursuing a career, and that was my thing. It took a while for me to circle back around and say, oh, and by the way, that's my institution, right? I own some of that. And so I would just encourage people to take ownership of that experience and take ownership of their role as an alum of UCCS, because it is your place. I mean, I know that we talk about that a lot, and it sounds cliche, but it is yours. I mean, the reason we are what we are is because everybody on this call had, added some brick to that, that structure along the way. And so ownership makes all of this sort of feel better, and you feel tied to it. So that would be my parting words.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing you on campus and all of our new and returning students. I just can't tell you how excited I am for August to be here.
Us too.
Thank you, Mathew. Thank you, friends, and watch for your email for more 5 things you need to know.